Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO Podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO.
Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Richard. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Here we are on the inaugural episode of our podcast.
Yeah, exciting stuff. It's a bit of a first for both of us, I think.
Well, absolutely. And I know you've taken some time very kindly from your vacation. You're in the sunny south of France. So thank you for the sacrifice of taking an hour right now.
Yeah, no, well, always a pleasure with you, Richard.
Oh, you're so kind. Well, why don't we, before we dive in, perhaps we'll give some introductions, explain who we are and why we're doing this, but perhaps shall I just start by kind of setting out for people listening what we're doing on this podcast?
Yeah.
So this is called the Impact Multiplier CEO Podcast. And the reason for this is that I suppose I'm on a bit of a mission to multiply the impact of successful leaders in the world, because there are so many people who have achieved so much, have so much resources, experience, relationships, skills, and but they actually always have the potential to do so much more. And so helping successful leaders find their growth edge, find how they can make a bigger impact in their organization and in the world, and achieve 10x more than they've ever done to date. That's really my passion. And so that's really, I suppose, the agenda for this podcast. So it's about impact, financial, but also what do we create in the world? What's our legacy? What do we create in our organizations? It's about multiplication, because it gets to a stage where incremental isn't enough, and we want to really go big. And CEO, it's for CEOs or people that think like CEOs. So if you're somebody who has that ownership mindset, who wants to build something, who wants to create a movement, an organization, then hopefully this podcast will be for you, and we'll give you some interesting food for thought. So Stephanie, before we go any further, why don't you just give us a bit of an elevator pitch, a bit of your story, a bit about who the real Stephanie is beyond the chic Parisian facade. What's been your story up till now?
Well, so as you can tell from my voice, although I live in Paris, I'm actually was born and raised in England. So my very English accent. I've been in Paris for about 4 years, and I've been working in tech for about 20. Way before it was cool, back when we had black screens and green writing, working for startups, bootstrapped, scale-ups, and really my interest in this is I've worked across multinationals, nationals, but the common themes are there in terms of how do you take ownership, you do more than you're doing today without drowning, and without completely untenable in terms of a long-term strategy. Always enjoy the conversations with you, Richard, and I'm glad to share some of those insights and some of that dialogue with the audience.
Absolutely, perfect.
What about you? Well, Richard, maybe you tell the audience about yourself, because I know you, but maybe not everyone knows you.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking as you were speaking, we've kind of had similar paths in some sense, right? I'm British. I'm now also French, living just outside Paris, in the leafy suburbs rather than the chic centre. I always say, whenever I start talking about myself, it's like, please shut me up, because obviously talking about myself is my favourite subject. But so in a nutshell, I was born in the southwest of England by the sea. Moved to the Midlands. Studied at Oxford. got my master's degree at Oxford, went into consulting in tech, telecoms, media, that kind of space, became a partner in that strategy consulting company. Then moved to Cisco, spent about 10 or 11 years at Cisco doing various roles, executive roles, strategic business development roles. And the last role there was in a team set up by the CEO and global head of sales of Cisco to really, well, I like to describe it as fulfilling rash commitments made by the executives in customer meetings. So really catalyzing innovative business initiatives with some of the largest customers and partners. So this was really a role of influence where you couldn't necessarily force people to do things because they weren't hierarchically yours. And in fact, they weren't even in the same company sometimes, but it was about how do you actually catalyze people to do new things across multiple organizations and even multiple companies and into an ecosystem. And that was fascinating and a real opener, because actually that is most people's management reality these days. We often don't have hierarchical control, or even if we do, frankly, people aren't necessarily listening to what we're saying because there's so much else going on. And so that idea of how do you actually create the context for people to do new things, I find really fascinating. And then the last real phase has been in this world of executive coaching, leadership development, and really bringing that strategic angle to all of that debate. So I founded Xquadrant a few years ago, working really with high achieving CEOs and founders or people on the executive team of companies going through fast change, going through high growth, going through complex market transitions. Normally there's some kind of digital or tech context around that. There might be a tech company, or there might be a company really going through a digital transformation. And yeah, that's what I love doing, helping leaders get to the next level, right? Helping maximize their impact.
This is just a quick interlude before we get back to today's main conversation. To celebrate the launch of the podcast, we're giving away, for the first time ever, a coaching package valued at over $3,000. You can use it yourself, or you can give it to a friend or colleague who wants to multiply their impact. To enter, all you have to do is leave a review of the podcast on iTunes or in your preferred podcast app, and send a screenshot to podcast@xquadrant.com. And do that before 15th of September 2020. If you do miss that deadline, then leave a review before the 15th of October and there'll be a chance to win a smaller coaching package. For all the details, head to xquadrant.com/podcasts. Reviews are the lifeblood of any podcast, and so whether or not you're within the eligibility time, it would still be fantastic if you would leave us a review if you like the podcast, or if you see the potential in the future as we continue to refine it, develop it, and add to it. Many thanks, and let's get back to that conversation.
It sounds like you've been coaching a lot of people who've been experiencing the same things that I have, or a lot of my peers or my network have, in terms of those how to get to the next level, how do you do more, essentially. There's a certain mindset, I guess, where, you know, some of us are never really satisfied with what we're achieving. We're all looking for what can we do next? How can we make a different impact? You know, and for ourselves and for the organizations we're working with or within.
Yeah, exactly. And people actually ask, like, what's my, you know, who do I work with? What's the demographic? But I think it's the psychographic for me that's exciting. Mm-hmm. And that's why the word impact is important, because I know within me, and my CV looks really good, but I know within me there is this desire for, like, even, you know, I really want more impact in this world, mm-hmm. right? And I find that my clients are the same. So, mm-hmm. you know, as a CEO or as somebody thinking like a CEO, you've already demonstrated your impact, your ability to solve complex problems and achieve great results. You've already got a CV people would die for. You've got skills, resources, and experience, but you know inside that I've got potential for more. I've got this potential for even greater legacy. and what will it take to bring that out of me? And it can be hard, right? Because when you're at a high level, in some sense, you've got more to lose. You already know, you've already got a toolkit that works, but actually, what's the next level? What's the new version of you coming through, and what's the new toolkit that you're going to need for that next level? And it's not the one that got you there, right? That's the challenge, and that's the exciting part of this.
So I guess that's what this podcast is going to try to address. So maybe we should explain a little bit what this series is going to be about, or what the intent is, and what we're looking to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to do the podcast in seasons, as you said, and they'll really alternate probably between really talking about key ideas and concepts and tools that people can apply into their own life and business and leadership, really shifting insights, right? Creating new ways of thinking about the world. And then the other seasons will be around actually getting enrolled CEOs to share their perspectives on those things from what they're currently living through. So this idea of getting real in the trenches conversations going, as well as bringing some thought frameworks around to help us think differently about our situation and what could be possible. So I like to say that I work at the intersection of strategy, leadership, and purpose. So I think as we go through these conversations, we'll find those three elements coming up repeatedly. So the purpose element, perhaps we start there, it's finding the vision that sets you on fire. Because financial success is fueled, but what's the destination for the vehicle? And so if we're not really set on fire, if we're not really set alight by what we're trying to achieve, it's going to be hard to bring other people with us. As I like to say, you can't move others if you're not moved yourself.
Yeah, well, hard work doesn't feel like hard work if it's fun, and it's not fun if there's no purpose behind it. It's just work.
Yeah, and we all get to that stage, right, where we suddenly go, perhaps something needs to change here. I'm getting a bit bored in this role, or I'm getting a bit bored with this mission I'm on. So that's part of it. The second one is around perhaps the strategy part, which is upgrading your success formula. As I mentioned, we all have a way that we create results in the world. And if you got to somewhere like CEO, it's working pretty well, right? But often once we've got that formula, we try then to accelerate our results by running faster and faster. And we hit into a brick wall, right? We have no more hours in the day with a bottleneck. So you don't need to run faster. You can't. You actually need fresh insights and new capabilities to actually start to work on a different level. And that's the stretch. So you can either try to crack the time barrier, or you can kind of attack the capability barrier. And it's that barrier, I think, that creates the most results. And then the third one is around shifting from speed to momentum. So that's really the leadership question. How do you spend less time solving problems yourself and more time releasing a movement, releasing the energy of the people around you so that you actually have momentum? It's not all about you driving things. It's actually about you releasing the energy that's there in the organization.
So obviously that sounds really easy. No trouble explain that in about 5 minutes, and then we're all set.
Well, we've got a whole podcast to do it on, right? We've got a whole podcast to do it on.
No, but in all seriousness, all of those things, the purpose, the multiplication, moving from speed to momentum, that's something we're all looking for as leaders. I don't know a single leader who isn't looking to achieve more. And I think I'm going to enjoy, quizzing you as I always do, but this time with an audience, and certainly sharing some of our experiences and hearing from others about sort of what they do. It should be exciting. Yeah.
So what we're going to do in the first season is to really go into these 5 impact multipliers. So we'll explore those over the next few episodes. But the idea here is, what are going to be the 5 levers that we have that actually, if we focus on those, are going to create the biggest, most sustainable results in our business and in our own impact as leaders. So I think that's really where we're going to start the discussion. They're kind of big topics. So we'll, in some sense, do a high-level overview. We'll dive into a few particular areas, and then that will hopefully set the scene for conversations that can then come in the episodes to come.
Fabulous. So what are we going to cover in that first episode then?
So next time we'll dive into what those 5 impact multipliers are, how they work, what the idea behind them is, and as I said, these are the critical areas that we want to master if you want to get out of the "I just don't have enough hours in the day" trap.
Okay, so yes, a trap that many of us fall into. And I guess if people are interested in learning more, they can go to the website. They can get the YouTube channel, they can subscribe to the podcast, anything else?
No, absolutely. I think the last thing I'd say is if you really want to know what is the kind of the heart behind all this and what's the passion, I have a little manifesto on the Xquadrant website. So it's xquadrant.com/manifesto. And there you kind of get a sense about what's the mission that is fueling all of this.
That purpose, that fuel. You're right. You're putting into practice your own methodology and your own. That's good to see.
Well, yeah, and we can get into that. For me, this is a bit of a mission. It's true, right? I just love I love releasing more impact and success from people who want to do that, right? I think often we all hold ourselves back, right? We all hold ourselves back in different ways, and when we take the brakes off, we create extraordinary results, and that's just so exciting to see in the world.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to having these in-depth conversations with you.
Me too.
Talk to each other's ears off a lot. It's going to be a bit different for us to do it with an audience, so I hope it's as interesting for others as it is for us. Did you have any final thoughts before we get cracking with that first proper episode?
I think it's what I just said really. When you're at a senior level, you've found a success formula that works, and the temptation is to do more and more and more and more to drive those results. But you can't change gear when you've got your foot jammed on the accelerator. You need space and you need some fresh perspective to change up a gear. And so I hope that this show will be one element of giving you just that space and that fresh perspective to allow you to change up a gear and create new results.
Powerful stuff. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Stephanie. Look forward to speaking and doing this together, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in a position of top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? Well, this is what we do. If you'd like to know more about our community of extraordinary leaders, visit us at xquadrant.com.